Welcome to the Mad Love Your Life show. I'm Mary D, the Joy Catalyst, here to be your host and transformation guide. Mad Love is about the mad, making a difference, and love is what we serve up to live a delicious life. My intention is to help you spark new ideas, break limiting beliefs, and align with your deepest dreams and desires. Get ready for laughter, inspiration, and finding your inner roar in every show. Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's episode. Some of you may have seen that Coot Blackson was going to be on today. Surprisingly enough, his book is called The Magic of Surrender. And so today we are surrendering to the fact that the scheduling gods just aren't going to make it happen. And so that's okay because I have a great show for you today, regardless. I also want to remind you that at any point during the live show, you can call in your questions. You can just dial 1-866-451-1451. Or if you're streaming live from the YouTube channel, you can drop your questions for me down in the chat, and the studio engineers will pass your questions over to me to answer. So without further ado, I do hope that all of you are having a beautiful week. I hope that you are enjoying the springtime and that wherever you are, it is sunny and warm, even if it's only in your heart and your mind. For those of you that may be experiencing those April showers, it's been a wet year across the United States. So I will say that at least out in California, the super blooms are amazing. They're having a third round. So if you ever want to see a beautiful, beautiful display of flowers and get the best photos, now's a great time to visit Southern California. I was thinking about what shows up for most of us and what are some ways that we can navigate life happier, healthier, and happier and healthier don't just mean in our physical body, but that also means in our mind and in our spiritual life, in our mindset, in our emotions, like in all of the ways. How can we live a happier, healthier life? Because at the end of the day and at the end of our life, I believe that that's what we're going to look back and say is, what kind of life did I live? Was it a life full of regret? Was it a life full of hardships? Was it a life full of not full? Was it a life where the glass was half empty? Is it a life of not saying what you want or not making known what you want or your needs? Or is it fill in the blank? Fill in the blank with whatever it is that shows up for you. And one of the things it brought me back to is thinking about one thing that Tony Robbins actually brought up. I was at an event of his called Date with Destiny last year, and he had this really great question that he asked the audience. And the question was, what do you think about most of the time? And for many of us, we're like, oh, what, my work, my family, my body, my health, my this, right? We could fill in that blank sort of mechanically. But he asked us to really think about it, because what he said is that throughout our life, there's one question that we constantly ask ourselves. And I was like, ooh, that's juicy. Really? And I started to sit with it a little bit. And the example he gave was from his own life of having to grow up as this latchkey kid, having a tumultuous relationship at home with his mother. And part of what he realized is that for him, it was the question of safety. Like, how do I solve a problem? Because he's constantly having to problem solve around safety in his life, where their next meal is going to come from, how mom is or isn't going to show up, is someone going to be violent or not violent? And it made me think about how our communities really do shape us. They have the ability to shape us. And with that, I got to thinking about, what is my own question? And so for you, as you start to ponder that, based on your life history, and even today, if you have a big meeting this afternoon, then that might be what's on your mind. Like for me this morning, the show was on my mind. And every Wednesday, the show is on my mind, whether I have a guest or not. Like I always want to think about what's going to bring you the most value, how many hearts can a message touch, how can we dive into real conversations. And so that's like a temporary yes in this time frame. But when I close down this computer and I turn off the camera and I go about my day, what is most on my mind and what is the most on your mind? When the world gets a little quieter, what is that question that's always in the back of your mind? And so often for many of us, especially if there's any kind of trauma, any kind of background where you may have been framed by your your growing up, by how your environment growing up. It could be a question of safety. It literally could very well be, am I safe? Am I safe? That could be a constant question in your mind of, am I safe? Right? Think about someone who has been through the war, the PTSD that comes from some of our veterans and our soldiers that come back home from those experiences. They for sure had, through that trauma, their question becomes, am I safe? Because for so long, they were sitting in a trench shooting at an enemy or waiting for an enemy to show up and going through those ups and downs of war for many, many months. And so that got ingrained in them and became a constant in the back of our head. Am I safe? And am I safe is a very, very normal human need. And unfortunately, for many of us, the experience is that there were times in our life where we didn't feel safe. And sometimes because they were such big pieces of time and they were such big situations in our life, or challenges, or things that we might not have even been able to control, they show up and we're like, ooh, like, am I safe? Am I safe? And so I want you to know that there's nothing wrong with whatever your question is. It's literally just an awareness around, what question am I asking myself? And so that you can see, where does your mind often tell you what to think about, because your mind is telling you what to think about. So, for example, I don't watch the news. It's not my thing. It never has been. And I realize that part of that is because I don't want to be fed what I should think about. I want to be able to come up with my thoughts all by myself. And when I say that, some of you are like, wait, I don't quite get that. So I'm going to rewind a little bit. When I say that you want to be able to control, well, let's use control loosely. I think you all know how I feel about the word control. But when we want to think about how we have it in our choice of what goes in, then this is one of those opportunities. Like, choosing to not watch the nightly news for me is because I feel like if the news wants to talk about politics, right? It's a political year. So this is where that can happen. Then sorry about that, guys. Then what happens is the politics is what's on everybody's mind. And when politics is on everyone's mind, then that's what people are thinking about. That's what people are talking about. That's what people are, that's the buzz, right? It's what you may go on in your mind to think about, in terms of what's going on and what you allow to occupy your mind. And so when I think about what's occupying my mind, I don't want it to be full of news headlines like shootings and negativity and all the horrible things that can be going on in the world, because then it's easy to view the world in a lens of some negativity when it's constantly coming at you. So I'm not saying that you need to ignore the fact that there are things that go on in the world that aren't great, because the truth is there are things that go on in the world that aren't great. However, you can also choose to control what you want to think about and where you want to go. And I want to focus my time on living life to the fullest. I want to focus my time and energy on, how can I be the difference in the world? How can I be someone who brings light into the world? How can I be someone who is more conscious and more compassionate? And when I don't feed myself negativity, it allows me to do that. So I really want to encourage you, especially if you are feeding into any of the negativity, if you find yourself in a lot of negative thoughts, if you find yourself in a lot of fear about what's going on in the world, this is a great opportunity to turn off some of those external outlets that are overstimulating you and creating that thought in your mind, because you're allowing those factors to show up and go, oh, well, why don't you start thinking about all the bad that's going on in the world? Why don't you start thinking about the election? Why don't you start thinking about this and that? So, this is a really, really great practice to be able to move out of some of that. And I say all that not because that was going to be the focus of today's show, but I did want to share that with you just as a baseline, because what I do want to talk about with you today is criticism. And I want to talk about 3 ways that you can rise above criticism, because criticism is just another often external factor of what we can see in our visual pan. We can be critical about other people. We can also be critical about ourselves based on what we're seeing in the world. We can also be critical based on our past and what other people have projected onto us that we've chosen to believe, or it's just been told to us over and over and over again. And somehow we're like, oh, I keep hearing that, so it must be true. And I want to give you an opportunity to just really embrace all of those criticisms, and I want you to scoop them up. We're going to broom them. We're going to scoop them up into a little pile, and we're going to set them over here, and we're going to talk about them, because those criticisms, there's a couple ways you can go when criticism shows up. One of them is you can rise above the criticism. And the other one is that you can sit with the criticism. The other one is that you can waddle and wade and swim in the criticism. And it's really up to you on which of those scenarios you want to go with. Because sometimes criticism can be one of those things that helps us pull up our bootstraps a little bit and go, no, you know what? I'm going to prove them wrong. And in that way, it's a motivator. And that's a really healthy way to use criticism. Other times, it might be an option to reflect. So, a reflection of like, hey, this is what's going on in the world. And if I'm hearing this thing, right? Like if I hear that I'm a gossip, right? Let's say pretend that that's the word. Oh, I've heard my friends I heard them talking about me, and they all said I'm so gossipy, and that's why no one wants to share their secrets with me. Then it's an opportunity to sit with that for a moment and say, is it true? And in that case, it could be very revealing, because what if you are gossipy and you're like, ooh, maybe I'm not being a great friend if I'm being gossipy? How can I be more aware of that? And what is it in me that's making me gossipy? Right. And then there's the other end of the spectrum, which is the one I mentioned about maybe that parent that said, oh, you're so clumsy. Oh, you're so clumsy. Oh, you're so unorganized. Why can't you be more like your sister, your brother? They've got it together. And those could be criticisms that are really hurtful. And depending on when you experience them in your life, especially if you experience them in your childhood or your young adult years, that's really hard, because that's the reinforcement that you're getting. Much like the news, right? Our parents, our parental figures, our peers, our circle can become the news for us, because they're really telling us what to think about in a way. And this is also an opportunity to stop and evaluate, and also to sit with like, ooh, like, is that criticism true for me? Or is it just true in this one moment, right? We are all clumsy at some point. Nobody walks perfectly their whole life. There are cracks in the sidewalk, and there's roots on the hiking trail, and there's slippery concrete after it rains. So, all of us, I think, have probably left the blender top off at one point, or we have made a mess cooking, or whatever you want to call it. And it's also that part of saying, is this who I am? Am I labeling myself as clumsy or unorganized, or is it just in this particular moment? I had such a great realization with myself um, last year. I was sitting in a plant ceremony, and for those of you that haven't heard my show before, or aren't familiar with me, I am definitely a fan of plant medicine as a tool. I don't think it's for everyone, but I think that it's really helpful for a lot of people. And one of the tribes that I sit with, their medicine is ayahuasca. And if you don't know about ayahuasca, it can be hallucinogenic, but really, I'd say ayahuasca, mushrooms, MDMA, those are all the items that help you, or substances that can help you get under the surface when you can't quite get to the surface yourself. And if you're already great at getting to the surface, it can usually help you go even deeper. And so that's the tool, one of the tools that I love to use as part of my practices, depending on what I'm called to. So anyway, back to the ceremony. Um, I had just gotten news that my mom went into the hospital. And as I came into ceremony, I remember feeling so disjointed, because part of me was like, do I leave? Like, this has been planned for like the last year. It's taken lots of planning to be here. The group is very small, it's very intimate. Only so many people, can sit here in this circle at this particular time. I also had my ex-husband coming with me, which was a beautiful breakthrough. Another friend was showing up. So, like, the fact that we'd all coordinated and gotten here in this place and time, I really felt like I needed to be there. And I felt the pull of, oh my gosh, like, I also need to go be with my mom, because she's in the hospital. So I'm getting updates from my parents. Sounds like she's okay. It's kind of routine. Like, so it's all this internal and external, my own internal feelings, and all this external output that's coming together and forming for me the feeling of like, oof, I really want to be able to do this. I really want to be able to get in there and not have to worry about what's going on, and be present to where I'm at, but also present to my mom's situation. And before I finish that story, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you what happened.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zorek, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorick, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorick has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
All right. And we're back. So I wanted to finish sharing with you the story that I started, which was about sitting in a plant ceremony, getting the call from my parents that my mom is in the hospital, and my inner turmoil over whether I should come or go, leave or stay. And part of this and how it has to deal with criticism is I was having my own self criticisms around being a good daughter and also criticisms around taking care of myself. And so with this, I had to get really grounded and really real with myself. That's really the best way I can put it. And part of me said, okay, if I really lean into how I feel right now, what is my knowing? And for me at the time, my knowing was my mom is going to be okay. This isn't a serious hospital visit. And I know that as soon as this weekend is over, I'm going to see her on Monday. And it's only Friday. So with that, I decided to stay. Still a little discombobulated because it's still on my mind. And what's interesting is I watched myself that first day of ceremony. And I could already see how my inner world was affecting my outer world. And y'all, this is what our self talk does. Our inner world 100% affects our outer world, whether it's our attitude, whether it is our emotions, how we talk, how we walk, how we hold ourselves, and really how we're feeling on the inside and what conversations we're also choosing to have with ourselves on the inside. And with that, it was interesting to really actually go through one of the most difficult times in ceremony for myself as I sat with the medicine that night. And I felt really out of sorts, even while I was in the music and in the beauty of all the things that were opening up to me. I also was super frazzled. And that's not an emotion that was something that's normal or that I would say is my normal state. And so I had a deep appreciation because I realized that some of you, this is how it is. Your mind is very busy all of the time, and you're getting a lot of external input, especially in this day and age where we have social media and we have the internet. We're getting constant barrages of news, information, marketing, even educational things, and some of it great, some of it not so great. And up to us to decide what we're going to allow in and what we're going to sit with. So as that night went on, I could feel it ungrounded, totally all over the place. And that was my lesson. Part of it was my lesson of being able to sit with just the chaos of it, and go, wow, this is what chaos feels like. And it doesn't feel great. And I don't like this. And also, sometimes chaos is a part of life. Sometimes a monkey wrench gets thrown into the plan, and not everything goes as perfectly as we may have laid it out to be. So the next day, I was much more grounded. I had really checked in with my parents. My mom was all right. She was going to get to go home. It was just a, couple nights, and everything's okay again. And I remember just feeling relief and also gratitude that I had listened to myself and that I had said, okay, let me continue having my weekend. And also, what does this need to teach me? What can this show me? And that evening, again, with the inner world affecting the outer world, there was one thing that happened that made me laugh. And the night before, you get these really big blankets. Okay, so think king size blanket, and it was winter time, so having the blanket was important because it was cold outside and made it a little cool inside, especially with if the doors opening, people going inside, outside. And what was funny to me is the day before, as big as this blanket was, y'all, I could not situate this blanket around me. Like I was just fidgeting with it and kicking it. And I was like noticing that it was just kind of like everywhere. I didn't know like which side was the long side and which side was the short side. And the second night when I was grounded and I was getting back to my center, I really recognized how affected I was because what I had done is I had folded my blanket in such a way that I could easily unfold it onto myself in like little squares. So it was because it was so organized, I was able to easily wrap it around me and stay warm, and it felt like I was back in the flow and back in the rhythm again. And that was the moment for me that I just had a chuckle with myself, and I was like, "Oh, Mary." Like, look at how you everything that's happening here really affects what's happening out here. And so back to criticism, uh, the first thing I would say when you're tackling whatever criticisms are coming up into your life or showing up for you is know who you are. Knowing who you are is so important, and having a good vision of who you are. And when I say know who you are, it maybe you are a little unorganized, and that's okay. But when I say know who you are, I mean know who you are on the inside. Know and recognize yourself for being the splendid, lovely human that you are. And also understanding that, like, we all make mistakes, we all lie, we all fumble, we all stumble. It's all part of this human experience. There is literally no one perfect. And I don't think that perfectionism was meant to be the human experience. I think perfectionism you can leave to God. You can leave to maybe it's sculptors and artists, but for our human experience, I believe that part of what makes humaning such an adventure is the fact that there are all these ebbs and flows, and we have to deal with ourselves and come clean with ourselves. And sometimes come clean with others and apologize to others, and we get to decide how to show up. And through these moments, they're what shape us. And also, external factors shape us. Those parentals that raised us, or those parental figures, our community. And community is such a powerful thing because our community really does also show up and tell us what to think about, share with us what's going on. We ideally should be able to share with them what's going on and create a support structure. And I realize that not everyone has that. So in this first rule, which I would say is the know who you are, I go back to criticism when I was a child. And my mother was not highly critical of me for the most part. But where I experienced criticism was with other children, especially children who did not look like me. And I've shared with you all stories before about my childhood and how I went to a very Caucasian school in the middle of Texas, in the middle of nowhere. And it was like me and like one other Asian kid. I think the percentage of diversity in that school was less than 1%. And when the kids would make their mantras or sing their songs, and my alleged friends would even chime in out of their own ignorance, they would say things like Chinese, Japanese, something about dirty knees. And I don't even remember the whole sing song, but it was meant to be a criticism, and it was meant to hurt me in some way. Now, because thank God at that age I knew who I was, it was enough for me to go, Yeah, no, I'm not gonna buy into that criticism because first off, I'm actually not Chinese or Japanese. I'm Thai. And, I think one of the phrases in the song has something to do with slanty eyes. I actually don't have slanty eyes. If you guys haven't noticed, I actually have pretty big eyes. My blame my American side. And with that, I just can break that down, right? I can break down that criticism, like I said in the beginning, of like, oh, this criticism is showing up. It's telling me what to think about. Well, now I'm going to think about, am I Chinese? Am I Japanese? Are my eyes slanted? And in all of those ways, I can evaluate and go, oh, no. So I know who I am. No, I'm not any of those things. So I'm not going to be offended by those things. And I'm going to allow those criticisms to slide off my back just like a duck. So like a duck's back is what they say. And so in that story, where do you fall when someone shows up and they have the criticism, your hair, your makeup, your show, the way you talk, your business, the way you raise your kids? What happens to you in those moments? Do you find yourself instantly offended? Or do you find yourself instantly sad and um, feeling down, like attacked? Or can you sit with it ever so quickly? Give yourself the one, two, three. Is it true? Could it be true? How is it true if it is? And if that answer for you is no, then that's a great opportunity for you to be like, not my issue, not my problem. What I like to tell others is when these things show up and I can locate that this is not going to be my issue, then I like to say, hey, not my monkey, not my circus. And someone else must have something else going on with them that's bigger than what's here today. And I just get to be their attack board for it for whatever reason. And if you think back over the course of your life and how you interact with your own friends and family, you can probably see those moments where even you have not shown up so great. Right? We've all experienced being hangry. And when we're hangry, we know that sometimes we can be a little vicious because we need to get some food into our bodies to regulate our blood sugar before we bite someone else's head off. And so it's in those moments, I just want us to all remember that compassion always wins. So, bringing you back to that, I will also say that there's a second thing you can do when criticism shows up, and that is keep up with your own measure, keep up with your own numbers. Know what your baseline is, know how you operate. And this kind of ties back in with the know yourself, but this is the number two is the measure yourself. And when I say measure yourself, I want you to measure yourself against you and not anyone else, because this is where those criticisms can show up, especially the ones we do for ourselves that are so damning. And how that happens is just like it happened for me when I was a little girl in junior high, going through awkward body shifts and hormones and figuring out boys and just navigating all the things that pre-adulthood bring you. And it can be such a confusing time. It can be such a rough time. And people all show up so differently. And I look back at that and I remember not feeling good in my own body. I already looked very womanly in sixth grade. I was very curvaceous. I was, just, I don't know, puberty was showing up for me and it was showing up a little sooner than later. And so as I went into school, I looked around and I was like, wow, I do not look like any of these other girls. And I laugh now because some of my oldest friends are still from back in junior high and high school. And I had a birthday recently, and a few of them showed up, and we were laughing because everyone's had their own transformation. Like I can laugh with my friend Bretta because she used to be super skinny and super tall and kind of plain. And then one day she showed up to school and she had boobs and like highlights in her hair and she was wearing makeup, and it was like she transformed overnight. And but that's pre-adulthood. Like, puberty hits us at these different awkward times, and in between, it's all awkward. So when I remember looking and seeing my friends and looking around, I was judging me based on where they were at. And in that moment, I was like, oh, I don't think that the boys really like me because my best friend has a boyfriend and so has a boyfriend. She's not that pretty, but whatever. And like, then I start to create judgments, right? I start to be critical of other people because I'm also playing the comparison game. And then I'm going to be really critical to myself. And it was only in a moment of vulnerability that actually changed everything. And when I say it changed everything, it really shook my perspective and made me realize that the story I'd been telling myself in my own mind was just my story, and I was choosing to believe it. And it wasn't the necessarily the reality of what was happening for everyone else. And so once I got that aha moment, it really helped me go back to who I am. And that moment was sitting with three boys from my class, actually tearing up and saying, wow, is something wrong with me? Because I haven't gotten a boyfriend, and we're in seventh grade. And I remember the deer in the headlights that all three of them had when they were just like, wait, what? And then immediately, like a day later, one of them asked me to be his girlfriend. I think we lasted a month. And then the other one, right after that, asked me to be his girlfriend. I think we lasted a week. And so it was a funny little like door opening where they went, oh my gosh, she thinks she's not good enough or pretty enough. We think she's great. We're just terrified because we're awkward boys and we don't know how to ask girls. We don't know how to tell girls they're attractive. We only know how to tease them. And so it was this funny balance of getting through that and going, oh, like, this is such a strange place to be, of the story I've been telling myself and the criticisms I've been giving myself because I'm so busy comparing myself to others. So we are going to go to commercial break, but as soon as we come back, I'm going to share with you the third thing to overcome criticism.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Okay, before I tell you the third way to rise above criticism, I have one more story to share with you for the keeping up with your own numbers, which is number 2. And this one, again, is about measuring success, but measuring it against yourself and not others. And I had a very, very recent moment of aha with this one as well. So my good friend, he and I decided we're going to Sedona. We're going to hang out for the weekend. I've only been to Sedona once, but I really didn't get a chance to like explore it and hike all the trails and do all the beautiful, fun things that you would normally want to do if you're going to Sedona. I was literally driving through the first time I went. So he says, "Oh my gosh, Mary, I've been 3 times. It's amazing. There's all these hikes. It's so great." I'm thinking, "Oh, that's fantastic. I love hiking. It's very much a part of my life. Let's go. Let's experience this." While we're there, we come across he had gotten the name wrong. He meant to say um, some other rock. I want to say Black Rock, but I think he ended up saying Red Rock Trail. So I look up the Red Rock Trail. We get there, and it's nobody's there, which is strange to me because it's a weekend, it's beautiful, and there's definitely people buzzing around Sedona. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, well, who knew? Like, there's this beautiful trail. He says it's amazing. But when we pull in, he realizes that this is not right. He goes, I might have gotten that wrong. And I said, well, we're here. Do we want to go ahead and do it? And he goes, yeah, sure. So we're doing this hike, and it's supposed to be like a mile, 1.2 miles loop. And as we're walking, we're definitely past the 1 mile point, and the trail actually starts to go up a mountain. And the mountain is beautiful. And I'm like, let's go. So switchbacks all the way up, which make it easy. And he's lagging behind just a little bit. And we're getting towards the top, and he's questioning it. He's like, hey, like, do we know how much longer we have? And I said, no, we don't, but we're almost to the top. Let's just keep going. So I'm encouraging him. I'm like, come on, you can do it. As we're coming to the top, I am like dancing myself up, and I'm like, look, we're at the top. Look at this, how beautiful this is. You can see, Cathedral Rock, which is all the way across the canyon. You can see Sedona just for miles, and it's beautiful. And we're literally at the top of this mountain. And I can tell he's a little on the struggle bus. And in that moment, I was feeling a little bit critical because I was like, wait, I thought he was a hiker. And then I realized that I didn't ask the right question. And the right question would have been, what level of hiker are you? And that's important to know because there are definitely different levels of hiking. And so I said to him, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being this trail is so easy, I could do it in my sleep, and 10 is this is challenging. I don't think I've done something like this before. Where are you? And he gave himself a 7. And I was like, ooh, 7. Wow. And he's like, why? What's your number? I'm like a 1, like a -1. And we had a good laugh. And it was in that moment that I also got really compassionate. And I thought to myself, okay, like this is a stretch for my friend. And that's okay. And anyway, we end up doing the hike. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. He was glad he did it. And that really set the stage for the next day, which is when we did hike another trail called Cathedral. And if you've never hiked Cathedral in Sedona, Arizona, it is incredible. It's also a trail that is straight up. You have to go through rocks. You have to sort of rock climb through a section. And, but once you get to the top, y'all, it is incredible views. And there's actually a little sign at the top that lets you know that you have reached the top and that this is the end of the trail. And throughout the trail, there's also piles of rocks to show you that this is their suggested kind of way to get up. Because again, it kind of just looks like you're trying to figure out how to climb rocks to get up to the top. And as we are looking at this one, I'm like, oh, great, let's go, right? It's almost sunset. This should be amazing. It shouldn't take that long because it's just a mile straight up. And as we get to the portion where the rocks are really challenging, meaning we're going to have to get down on hands and knees, we're going to have to really shift our body weight up to hold on to a rock, to pull ourselves up, to find another space in the rock to pull yourself up. This is the part where he kind of looks at me and he's like, should we go back? And I'm like, of course not. We're almost halfway up this mountain. We got to keep going. And I'm watching the different people that are coming and going. And this is where criticism is helping me because, y'all, there's a lady with a baby strapped to her front and she is making her way down from where this rock climbing part is. And I'm thinking to myself, if a lady who's got a baby strapped to her can make it up that thing, for sure we can do it. And that's a great example of letting that initial criticism feed you a little bit and go, hey, I'm going to let that motivate me. If she can do it, surely I can do it. And in that moment, I said to him, hey, if you watch me, like, you'll just be able to do the same thing and we'll make it, like, we'll be good. And so we did it. And as soon as we finished, I remember him popping up and he goes, oh my gosh, that wasn't so bad. And he was like, hey, I would have missed this if we hadn't been doing this together. And I thought, wow, what a beautiful way for community to also encourage each other and to use those different little criticisms that creep up. Because for him, his own criticisms were, I've never done something like this. This feels very risky. And I have community, I have safety with my friend who feels like we can do it. And wow, also look at the people coming down, like, kids are doing it. I can do this if kids can do it. So I feel like this is also where that keep your measurement stick your measuring stick. Don't let it necessarily be anyone else's unless you're going to use it to be a motivating factor for yourself, because motivation can be powerful. And it can also be that self-talk that makes all the difference in having an adventure or in staying on the bottom side of the mountain. And we're all climbing mountains every day, y'all. So I want to encourage you to find your inner roar and get up those mountains, because the top of one mountain is just the bottom of another, and that's life. We've got to just keep climbing and enjoy the view along the way. So the third thing I would say about overcoming criticism is just that, which is surround yourself with the people that inspire and uplift you, people who encourage you, people who are on your side and on your team. Because again, none of us are perfect. It really is important to find community, and community is a place where we should be able to lay our head, where we should be able to lean into and feel like it's a safe space to share and to find like-minded conversations and people that we're really aligned with spiritually and physically and mentally. Like, all of those can be helpful things. When I was going through my last breakup, I remember how important community was for me, because I'm, pretty self-sufficient in a lot of ways. Like, my way that I lean into grounding is to journal, or to go and go inside a little bit, to hermit a little bit. That's really how I operate. That feels really good for me. And there's a story I want to share with you about community and how that really came together for me. But I will share that with you right after this commercial break.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zoric, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zoric, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorick has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
All right, welcome back, y'all. So the story that I was sharing with you all was around the way community has really come together for me in life and in the hard times. And so when I was having my breakup, this is where community was just vital, because it was a time where even in the hermiting, I needed some safe place to come out of and to bounce ideas off of, and to have other people who have been in my shoes or can at least be compassionate to wear the shoes that I'm wearing, can come and encourage me and be there for me, whether it's just a shoulder to cry on, whether it's just somewhere to process my grief, whether it's somewhere to laugh with, and for those people to pick me up and take me out for a nourishing meal or just give me a hug. And that's where I think about community, and how through those hardships, when those people show up, how it can be really, really beautiful, because you get such a great support structure. And in that support structure is where we all get an opportunity to see each other and hear each other and to hold space for each other, because so oftentimes the people we live with may not always be those people who are capable of holding space for us, or they may be the person that we're having the rift with, and we need someone to help mediate that. And I appreciate community. I was on a trip to Cabo with one of my best friends and my ex. He wasn't my ex yet, but we had been talking about it. And I remember feeling and knowing that that was going to be our last vacation together. And I think he could feel it too. And he was really struggling with his emotions around knowing that we're no longer going to be a couple anymore. And it was sort of our last ditch effort to have a conversation. And we were both in tears, and it was before bed, and everyone else had kind of gone to sleep except for the three of us. And I just remember how great she was at helping us navigate that conversation around, like, hey, do you understand how Mary's feeling? And she gave a great example, and she said, have you ever seen a dog from the street who is untrusting and has a lot going on, and every time you try to feed it, it bites you? And so this analogy was just like, okay, we can all visually like see this and see what it looks like. We can all imagine this dog that's like angry and upset, and that every time you go to feed it, it's like constantly snapping at you. And even if the dog stops snapping, because you've been snapped at so many times, every single time you go to feed the dog, you brace yourself a little bit. And it was so helpful for her to give that, because a little light bulb went off in his mind where he was just like, oh, wow. And that's what I mean about having someone who can intervene or intercede on your behalf in a way that gives everybody just some foundation of a place to start a conversation or end a conversation. For us, it was definitely starting the conversation around what this feels like, and can that be reflected through somebody else? Because clearly me reflecting that back to him wasn't working, but for her to create the analogy and the reflection was really helpful, and she really held space for us while we went through that. And then about a month later, we had fully uncoupled. And so I just think about that, and I think about the times where I was feeling extra lonely and I was feeling extra sad about my feelings and about the fact that things were ending, and being able to go and like get a hug, being able to just have a good cry. And also for him to do the same. He could go and have community hold space, and he could have a cry, and he could have a hug. And I think that those things are super important, which is why my third tip for you for overcoming criticism is to be surrounded by those really amazing people in your life who can nurture you and love you and hold you and be there for you when times are tough. And I feel like there's so much room. There's so much room for us to love and support each other. And with that, I do want to mention that I have crafted a new adventure. It's called MADLOVEology. I've shared it with you guys on a couple shows before. This is a retreat, and it's going to have us spending about 3 soul-filling days together with clean, delicious food, designing your future, designing what you want your life to look like, and it's going to be a place where you can be really held and supported by a group of amazing humans who will probably become your lifelong friends and community, people who know how to hold space and people who know how to be with you in those moments of grief. Anytime we're mourning loss, whether it's over body parts because something traumatic has happened, or whether it's mourning the past of something that's no longer. A lot of us experience breakups, or we might be even in a period of our life where we know a breakup may be showing up. And it's having people who can walk with you, people who have good listening skills, and I'm confident that the strategies and the frameworks that you walk away with are going to empower you for the rest of your life if you use them. I can say this from being someone who has come out of a breast cancer diagnosis, from someone who has come from a broken family, from someone who has come out of a divorce, from someone who has lost family and animals, and from someone who has lost a business, from someone who has had to go through lots of my own transitions in my life. How do we rebuild? How do we start again? And before that, when we're about to knock the building down, when we're about to enter into the conversation, if what's on your mind lately has been, oh, I don't know if this relationship is working for me, then this is a great time to start exploring what criticisms are showing up for you, and what evaluations can you give yourself, and also what's your measuring stick, where are you aligned and where are you not aligned. And I believe that the Mad Loveology retreat is really, really going to help you answer some of those questions, and will give you a great sense of community so that you have a place that you can call home in the meantime while you are going while you're climbing your mountain. So with that, I've got 2 sessions happening this year, June 20th through the 22nd, and another one in October. Spots are limited to keep the experience intimate. So if you feel called to join us, then head over to maryde.com. That's MARYDEE.com, and fill out the contact form, and we're going to send you all of the wonderful details. You can also book a discovery call with me if you want to see if the event is really a good fit for you. And I think we'll know after you fill out that intake form. We'll actually have a small discussion with you anyway. I'm excited about bringing you these frameworks that will transform your life for the better. We will also do some somatic healing, and that's movement. We'll work on some meditations, and we're going to have a good time together, helping you heal and helping you decide what this next chapter of your life really needs to look like, and what you want it to look like, and design it purposefully and with intention. So I do hope you'll join us. That is our show for today. We're back here next week for a new segment of the Mad Love Your Life show, and I am excited about bringing you new guests and really people that will help uplift and keep you in a great space with tools and inspiration. And, we get to see how life is done by others, and that gives us a great pattern to reflect on and see what we want to take with us and what we want to leave behind. And all of it's just part of humaning. Remember, you can always catch Mad Love Your Life here every Wednesday at 4 Eastern, and head over to maryd.com to grab the link to the YouTube channel, which is the Mad Love Your Life show, for even more great content. We have so many show extras for you there. And with that, can't wait to be back with you again. And until next time, may abundance always walk beside you. May joy always go before you. And may love always guide you on your path.
Thank you for tuning in to today's show. We air live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Bold Brave TV. We hope to see you back next week. For more ways to connect with my guests, content, programs, and retreats, just head over to www.maryd.com and subscribe. That's MARYDEE.com.